my pros and wherever we're going, you know we own it. All I fucking know is I got my pros and wherever we're going, I put my pros before.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to get into, what if Naruto was Madara's apprentice? If you like the video, please like and subscribe and share this to a friend. With that out the way, let's get into the video. Pain was staring out at a Megakure again. His thoughts were upon the new candidate in the Akatsuki. Ryu Yokes. An S-ranked shinobi who had recently infiltrated the Hidden Leaf village. He killed and injured many of Konoha's top shinobi, and almost killed the Hokage, Tsunade Senju. He also had the Sharingan, one of the most powerful Keki Genkai in the entire world. He may even have the Mangekyo Sharingan. Zetsu was correct in his assumptions of Yokes. He was a powerful shinobi. Although he didn't know which village he hailed from, but it didn't matter as long as he was an S-ranked shinobi. He was welcome among the Akatsuki. He had told Kakazu not to go after the bounty of Mr. Yokes, if a shinobi who had 700 million bounty on his head. Kakazu the Akatsuki treasurer would stop at nothing to retrieve that money. But then came the problem of his current status within the organization. He had no partner to be paired with, and he lacked one of the rings that linked him to the demonic statue. Orochimaru was in possession of the Sky Ring. Without it, Ryu Yokes couldn't become a true member of the Akatsuki, and he already had in mind his perfect partner. Despite not meeting the man for himself, he could trust the person with his chosen partner, and possibly eliminate a thorn in their side. Tsunade was currently massaging the migraine that was slowly coming at her. Ryu Yokes had caused quite the stir within the village, especially among the Umbu, Rookie 9 and Team Guy. Well, now it was Rookie 7 since Sasuke's defection and Naruto's death. She had contacted Jiraiya immediately to discuss the over-successful infiltration. And what she heard and saw of this Yokes was something that needed to be discussed behind closed doors lest Danzo and the elders get wind of it. But despite all the information she was able to put together, it felt like what Yokes showed was only the tip of the iceberg of his power, and she had this nagging feeling that Ryu was just toying with all the ninja he fought. There was only one question. Who is Ryu Yokes? Hopefully Jiraiya had the answer. And speak of the devil, when the old pervert came through her window. "Supheim, you wanted to speak with me," greeted Jiraiya in a happy manner. "Wait, don't tell me, you finally came and want to confess to me that you love me," continued Jiraiya. Tsunade snorted and gained a tick mark at Jiraiya's behavior of the serious matter. "No, that's not what I called you for, Jiraiya," said Tsunade. Jiraiya adopted his serious demeanor. "How is the monkey brat's training?" asked Tsunade. "Who? Konohamaru? If you told me that he might be a idiotic genius, I would have spat sake in your face," said Jiraiya. "But seriously, his training has been good, and this is a great way of repaying sensei by training his grandson. But his current power level would be that of a low genin. Give me another year and he may be low chunin level," said Jiraiya. Tsunade nodded at this. She remembered when the young Sarutobi barged into her office 2 years ago and demanded that someone train him so that he could avenge Naruto and bring his killer to justice. Flashback. It had been a month since Naruto's death, and Tsunade had been working tirelessly since she took up the god-awful position of Hokage. Konohamaru Sarutobi was an interesting case. From being one of the biggest prankstars in the village, he now became determined to exact justice on Sasuke Uchiha for killing his surrogate brother Naruto. Ebisu, his personal trainer, would come over and tell her of his training and saying how he was glad that the demon brat was gone and that he was not corrupting Konohamaru. Technically Naruto was helping the kid in his usual way. Tsunade heard this and he landed in the hospital for 3 months. She was just approving a B-ranked mission when the boy she called Monkey Brat came barging into her office. "Hey, you old hag," yelled Konohamaru. Tsunade reined in her temper, but she did have 2 prominent tick marks on her forehead. There was only one person who was allowed to call her old, and any copycat of that person just pissed her off even more. Konohamaru Sarutobi was definitely a second Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, because that was the blonde's true name. "Yes, Monkey Brat," answered Tsunade with Konohamaru's nickname. She was busy, she had no time to be dealing with this. "I need a new sensei since you're the one that put the closet pervert, Ebisu, in the hospital," said Konohamaru while pointing his finger at Tsunade. Then a opportunity hit her like bricks. "Well, there happens to be a certain shinobi that can take you on as his apprentice," said Tsunade with a glint in her eye. "Yeah, who?" asked Konohamaru. If this guy was a better teacher than Ebisu, then he would not use the sexy jutsu again. You can find him at the hot springs, can't miss him, said Tsunade. Kano Amaru walked out of the office and went on his way to the hot springs. Flashback end. Jiraiya took Kano Amaru on a training trip, thereby killing two birds with one stone. The hot springs were safe from the world's biggest pervert, and she got an annoying brat out of her hair. Tsunade, back to the real reason why you called me back to the village, said Jiraiya. Tsunade was about to answer when the very people she didn't want to see walked into her office. Danzo and her personal advisors. Hokage-sama, we need to talk, said Koharu Yudiden. Just great, as if I had enough to deal with, thought Tsunade. We received reports that the village had been infiltrated, again, said Danzo. In his mind, Danzo didn't believe that Tsunade was competent enough to be Hokage, like her predecessor Hiruzen. The Sandaime should have given Danzo custody of the Kyuubi container the moment the beast was sealed, and he should have given the last Uchiha as well to undergo emotional training and become a tool of the village loyal to him. Yes, that's why I called Jiraiya here as well, said Tsunade. Wait, Haim, someone snuck into the village, inquired Jiraiya. Tsunade nodded at him and began to elaborate. 1 week ago an assailant penetrated the defenses of the Leaf. His name was Ryu Yokaze, started Tsunade. He was able to pass by the detection barrier and knocked out two Chunin stationed at the main gate of the village, and yet he wandered around the village as if he was a citizen. We are currently unaware if he had an ulterior motive, but he was after what we believe is the Hiraishin no Jutsu of the Yondaime Hokage, informed Tsunade. And was he able to get the Yondaime's jutsu? Asked Danzo. We believe so, but we don't know. No one has been inside the Yondaime's estate ever since the Kyuubi attack 15 years ago, and the only person that was allowed in was the Yondaime's stated heir, replied Tsunade. But the Yondaime had no heir, Tsunade. What you are spouting is nonsense and flawed information, spat Danzo. The old Warhawk had been trying for years to get the Hiraishin for his root program, but Sarutobi always denied him and he couldn't get into the estate to begin with. Then you obviously don't remember the hospital incident 2 years ago, when a member of the Akatsuki ran a blood test at the hospital, said Jiraiya. That was Naruto's blood, they were scanning it since he was Minato's heir. Impossible, screeched Koharu. There is no possible way that the demon brat is the son of the Yondaime. Jiraiya pointed his finger to the picture of the Yondaime hanging up on the wall. The elders saw it, the resemblance between Naruto and the Yondaime, but they refused to believe all the evidence that was in front of them. You can't dispute all the evidence, and we also have a birth certificate and we can always show the recording from 2 years ago, said Jiraiya. The elders had to accept the fact that Naruto was the Yondaime's son. In Minato's will it stated that Naruto would inherit everything from his father when he turned 18, including the Hiraishin, and if any of Naruto's children, should he have any, would receive the same benefit, continued Jiraiya. But since Naruto is dead, there is no one to claim the inheritance, it is just void at the moment, finished the Toad Sennin. Then you should give me the inheritance, I can put everything within the Yondaime's library to use, suggested Danzo. This was his last chance to get his hands on the Yondaime's signature jutsu. No, said Tsunade. Danzo scowled at the Shodaime's granddaughter. In the will it was never mentioned that any of the Yondaime's jutsu would go to the village, so the estate and all its contents will be just an old ruin. But let's get back to the original reason why I called Jiraiya here and not you three, spoke Tsunade as she glared at the elders. Ryu Yokaze was able to sneak into the village, kill multiple Umbu and injure several clan heirs and top jonin. We are unsure if he was contracted to do this or he was here on his own free will, but what we did discover was. But she interrupted by Jiraiya. Wait, Haim, who is this Ryu Yokaze? Queried Jiraiya. I'd thought you would have some information on this person, said Tsunade. Sorry, Haim, never heard of the guy before, answered Jiraiya. So could you update this guy on me? Ryu Yokaze is a now wanted S-rank ninja, his background is unknown, his age is unknown. We didn't see any scratched out headband or any headband signaling ninja allegiance, and he didn't use any skills that samurai are known to use. As a person he is a complete unknown, but we were able to get a few things on him when he attacked our shinobi. You should look it up in the bingo book, notified Tsunade. He accessed the village and killed several high-ranking Umbu, and quite possibly has the Hiraishin, continued Tsunade. It's like this person fell out of the sky, he is just a complete mystery. This is bad, Haim. We need to be careful around this Ryu Yokaze, warned Jiraiya. Yokaze also has the Sharingan, informed Tsunade. Jiraiya was acting like a gaping fish. How could this person possess the Sharingan? Only 3 people in the world possess that Keki Genkai, which is Itachi, his brother Sasuke, and a transplanted one in Kakashi. What should we do about yokais? Asked Jiraiya, getting over his shock quickly. I don't know, this man is a ghost. He disappeared as soon as he had appeared, and then we lost all traces of his presence. We had the Inyazuka try to find him with his scent, but it was lost as soon as he vanished, and the Hyuga clan were unable to find him within the village. Probably by then he had already escaped. But if we do see him, we capture him and find out any information and intelligence he may have, and if we cannot, we kill him and burn his corpse, said Tsunade. But while this was happening, Danzo as usual was plotting something. He was thinking that if he could persuade this Mr. Yokais to join the Leaf and serve under him as a root agent, then he could gain a powerful asset if what he heard of what yokais could do. Pain was watching over AIM. Ryu Yokais had received his invitation into the Akatsuki. It had been a week and Pain had yet to receive his answer. Zetsu materialized form the floor, only his torso was visible. Leader Sama, Ryu Yokais has entered AIM, he has officially agreed to join the Akatsuki, said Zetsu. Pain never showed any emotion, but he was pleased that Ryu had accepted the invitation. Very good, Zetsu, I will summon the other Akatsuki members in order to introduce him and await his partner, spoke Pain. In fact, I'm happy that Yokais joined us. I want to see what he's like. Naruto, now going by the alias of Ryu, was walking through the village hidden in the rain, his face stoic and emotionless. He didn't turn his head to look at anything except for the path he was wailing on. His coat's hood was down because he didn't need to hide his face from the population of AIM, though he still got his Sharingan active. But something strange was happening to him. Out of the corners of eyes, and thanks to the increased vision of the Sharingan, he could see several women stripping him with his eyes, and they were giggling amongst themselves and blushing. Naruto hadn't had interaction with the females of his species for over 2 years, and he had little social interaction besides Zetsu and Madara. The women's eyes were either directed at his face, which led him to the conclusion that he was handsome, and a few days ago he did notice a change in his face. It was now more angular and his eye shape was more narrow like his father's, but still round and most like the chin-length strands of hair on the sides of his face, and the nose-length strands that fell between his eyes may have accentuated his overall attractiveness. Their eyes were also directed at his muscles, which he noted were lean and rippling. He knew that all the physical workouts Madara made him do likely had a part to play with this. And his armor did little to hide all the muscle he had, such as his chest and biceps. Or they were directed at his crotch, where women both teenage and other ages blushed furiously, and later they had chronic nosebleeds, and many women were taken to Ames Hospital to treat blood loss. To Naruto this all seemed weird, and yet he had an amusing feeling inside of him. He just couldn't explain, but it made him chuckle. When he was invited to the Akatsuki, he received a letter hand-delivered to him by Zetsu explaining to come to the tallest tower in the hidden rain. That's where he supposed the leader of the Akatsuki stayed. He already had the pleasure of meeting two other Akatsuki members. Itachi Uchiha, Sasuke's older brother, and Kisame Hoshigaki, the Kirigakure no Kaijin, monster of the hidden mist. He hadn't met any other members, but he was sure that some, if not most, were freaks, because most S-ranked shinobi were freaks. But he was wondering who he would be partnered up with. He had a million guesses going through his head. He just hoped it was someone quiet and not a freak. He would have arguments over which one was better or which ideal is correct. He didn't have the time nor the patience for that. Then he had Pain's tower in his sight. It really was the tallest tower in the village. It easily dwarfed all the other skyscraper-like towers, and it was quite interesting in Naruto's opinion. It had 4 faces on each side of the tower, with multiple pipes and tubes sticking out of each of Ti's faces. Naruto could barely make out a silhouette on the tongue of one of the faces. But he shrugged it off and continued onwards. He reached the base of the tower and found a chain-link fence surrounding it. He jumped over the fence and walked up to a door on the side of the tower. When he opened the door, he was met with stairs, lots of stairs. He groaned a little and starting his trek up the tower. Zetsu was waiting next to Pain along with Konan, waiting for Ryu to arrive. Konan was a little anxious. She had no idea what this Yokai's person would be like. What if he enjoyed killing like Sasori and Haiden? What if he was psychotic like Kisame and Kakazu? She just hoped he didn't have a stupid obsession for art or money. Pain didn't care what Ryu was like. As long as he served his ultimate goal, then nothing mattered. Zetsu, he was just Zetsu. Nobody knew what he was thinking except for Naruto, but he would only be half right. They heard footsteps coming from the door behind them and the small sound of armor clanking a little. White Zetsu smiled. Nar Ryu would have a hard time getting adjusted to being with a partner, but he knew that all these years training would have to amount to something, so this would be interesting to say the least. Black Zetsu couldn't smile, but he was in a way excited for Ryu's reaction to working with a partner. The door opened and the trio saw a man clad in black. He had black leather armor that hugged his form quite nicely. He had black pronged pauldrons on his shoulders and black pronged bracers and black clawed gloves. His boots were unique for he had silver claws on the toes and sharp spurs on the back of the heel. He wore a light blue rope belt with the ends of the belt hanging between his crotch and right leg and ending down below the knee. He also had a black sleeveless coat with the edges tattered along with bright red flame motifs on the edges and had the kanji for Kuro Ryu, Black Dragon, on the back. The coat also had a hood and a long collar with 6 silver megatama on each collar. He also had a long katana held by a sheath on his back with a light blue rope on the hilt that was 23 inches. His face was narrowed and he had golden spiky hair that ended in a low ponytail. He also had chin-length strands of golden hair that framed the sides of his face and nose-length strands that fell between the eyes and parted at his nose. He had narrowed eyes that were slightly rounded with a pair of blood-red cherry non in each eye. Overall the man was extremely handsome. If he wasn't a shinobi he'd be a great male model. Konan found herself blushing a little when her eyes traveled downward towards his man package and in her opinion he was quite big. Both Zetsu and Pain didn't notice the stain of pink on her cheeks. Pain turned around and faced Ryu. And his first thoughts on the man was a man who carried himself with confidence and pride in his power. But the blonde hair he never pictured in his mind. Welcome Ryu Yokaze to the Akatsuki in a Megakure, greeted Pain. Ryu didn't physically register what Pain had said, but his eyes spoke the truth. Konan stepped forward and handed him an Akatsuki cloak. Naruto was taken back by the sheer beauty of this woman. She had a perfect heart-shaped face with stunning blue hair, with some tied in a bun with a blue origami flower. She had enchanting amber eyes and unique piercing under her lip and he could tell she had a killer body underneath her cloak. Magnificent was the word he would use to describe her. He took the cloak in his hand. It was the usual thing, black with red clouds. Ryu took the cloak off Konan's hands but he never noticed his gloved hand touch hers momentarily where a spark seemed to set off between the two. Konan blushed a little while Naruto hid his expression. Years under tutelage of Madara allowed him to control his emotions quite well. Naruto slipped the cloak over his body and readjusted his katana sheath. The cloak fit him perfectly and you could still see his ankle-length coat. Now Ryu, I will be teaching you a jutsu that will allow us to communicate with the rest of the Akatsuki, explained Pain. You only require the ram seal and you only say the jutsu's name. Everyone in the room used the ram hand sign and focused their chakra. Pain didn't have to tell him the name of the jutsu because Naruto could read lips thanks to the Shinon. Gentoshin no Jutsu, magic lantern body technique, chanted everyone in the room. They then found themselves in a dark cave-like room with a burning lantern in the middle. Naruto noticed that his body had an astral rainbow look and the only thing that didn't appear like a rainbow was his eyes and the red clouds on his cloak. He also noticed that Pain, Zetsu, and the unknown blue-haired woman, unknown to him, were also with him. Then 6 other astral bodies appeared. 4 of these bodies he didn't recognize, but 2 he recognized even with the celestial bodies blocking their appearance, Itaki and Kisame. Then all eyes turned towards the leader. Zetsu had told Naruto earlier on that he should refer to Pain as Leader Sama, but why he had no idea even Itaka fell in line with Pain and the Uchiha prodigy was incredibly strong. He was one of the strongest Uchiha to come out of the clan excluding Madara and his brother Izuna. And the other S-rank criminals among him, bowed down to their leader. Welcome. I have gathered you all here to welcome the newest member of the Akatsuki, said Pain. Everyone in the room except Konan and Zetsu turned to their newest arrival. The ones who had the biggest reaction to the new member were Deidara and Itaki. Deidara sputtered around. This guy had the eyes he hated the most, Sherry-non. He would always remember the humiliating defeat Itaka gave him before he joined the organization. Itaka's reaction were raised eyebrows, which was the most you would get out of him. But the thoughts going through his head were, why does this man have the Sherry-non? Is he an Uchiha? This is Ryu Yokaze, continued Pain. He was about to say something but he was cut off by Kakazu. I've heard of you, Kuro Ryu, Black Dragon, quite the bounty on your head and all the shit you've done. Said Kakazu. It's too bad I can't kill you yet, I would have loved all that money. Now Kakazu, he might be a fellow follower of Jashin-sama. Said Haiden. So tell Mr. Yokaze, do you follow the laws of Jashin-sama? Who? Said Ryu with his usual blank face. Haiden face faulted at what Naruto said. Is that some kind of wandering clown who uses his hands as feet and feet as hands and can't tell the difference between his arse and head, continued Ryu. Now Haydn was pissed this blasphemer was insulting his god, and to top it off he had an annoying smirk that spoke, "I'm superior to you." The Jashinist looked ready to kill someone. Kakazu just smirked, he was liking this guy already. Itake's face twitched a little, finding the situation funny. Kisame laughed, you couldn't see Sasori's face. Deidara was chuckling a little and Konan had a small smile. "Hey dare you, you blasphemer." Haydn took out his three-pointed scythe and aimed at Ryu. "Maybe I should offer you up to Jashin-sama," said Haydn. "Sorry, I don't swing that way and I don't like clowns," baited Naruto with the signature annoying smirk. Smoke was fuming out of Haydn's ears, how he would love nothing than to punch that grin of his face. Kakazu started laughing along with Sasori, Deidara, and Itake was chuckling a little. Konan let loose a few giggles. "Now threaten me again and I will stab your eyes with needles and have you relieve what you fear most," threatened Ryu, leaking a bit of killing intent. Haydn was frozen in fear, and since he couldn't die so Ryu must have been serious. Kisame grinned a sickly grin, Itake was emotionless, Sasori was chuckling from seeing Haydn's reaction, Deidara whistled, and Kakazu was smirking at the mental image he was able to conjure up. But there was still some questions that needed to be answered. "Hey, tell me something, Ryu, my man, how do you have those infernal eyes?" Asked Deidara. Even though he hated the Sharingan, he liked Ryu despite only knowing him for a few minutes. "They were a gift," answered Naruto. "You asked how I have these eyes, not who or when I got them, so, no more questions about my Keki Genkai," threatened Ryu darkly. Deidara seemed to shrink in size at the piercing glare he was getting from Ryu. He made a mental note not to piss him off. "May I ask, Ryu," said Sasori, gaining Naruto's attention. "What do you think of art?" asked Sasori. Before Naruto could answer he was cut off by Deidara. "Why would Ryu, my man, be interested in your art, Sayori, my man?" protested Deidara. "True art is a spur of the moment, watching it dazzle the sky and in a bang it is gone, that is true art." "I don't think I asked you on what your poultry version of art is, Deidara," spoke Sasori. "Besides, true art is eternal beauty, making it last forever, preserving it through the ages, that is the only way art can be appreciated." Ryu coughed, gaining the two bickering artists' attention. "My version of art? Is that what you said? What was it, Sasori?" asked Ryu. "Yes, what is your art?" asked Sayori. Ryu contemplated this for a while. He never really thought of anything outside training and his ultimate goal. He then looked over at Konan and he truly found his answer. "Art is enjoying one's passion in the company of another. This kind of art is temporary, but it's far more enjoyable and pleasurable," answered Naruto. Deidara and Sasori were intrigued, so was everyone else in the room, especially Konan. "Good, since we have introduced each other, it's time for missions that the Akatsuki have been contracted to undertake. I will relay these missions later," spoke Pain. He turned to Yosuke. "Ryu, I am aware that you lack a partner within the organization, so you will be paired with Konan," said Pain. Konan widened her eyes at this because she never expected to be separated from Nagato. Ryu didn't really care so long as they could work together, he had no qualms. "Your first mission as a partners will be to retrieve Orochimaru's Akatsuki ring. Assassinating him is secondary and only when the opportunity presents itself," continued Pain. Nagato knew of Ryu's skills as a master of stealth. If he was able to sneak into Konohagakure, then Orochimaru's base wouldn't be that hard. "Now go." Naruto then found himself back at the dreary tower again. He saw Zetsu standing around being Zetsu. "I will try to find Orochimaru's base, all I know is that is hidden near Kusagakure." "Goodbye," said Zetsu as he shifted within the ground. Ryu looked over to Konan and saw her fidget around uncomfortably. She wasn't expecting this. Konan had mixed feelings at the moment. She knew why Pain teamed her up with Ryu, but she felt a little uncomfortable around him, but she didn't want to be separated from Nagato. Then her mind caught up with her and she put on her neutral demeanor. "I will meet you at the entrance to the village in half an hour," spoke Konan. Ryu nodded and left the tower, heading for the entrance. He was at the gate of the village and there wasn't anyone around, until Zetsu appeared. "You got quite a good catch, Naruto," teased White Zetsu. "I mean, she's hot like amazingly ho dash." White Zetsu would have continued if it wasn't for the deathly glare he got from the Sharingan wielding blonde. He hated when Zetsu was like this. "White Zetsu," said Naruto. The white half shivered a little at the glare he was receiving. "How do you picture your death?" asked Ryu. Stuttered Zetsu. "Do you want me to choose your death for you?" asked Naruto as he put on a curious expression. "I'm pretty sure that can be arranged." White Zetsu cowered while the black half was chuckling. Naruto just made the white half a little bitch just by looking at him. I will try and find Orochimaru's exact location near Kusagakur, however it will take 3 days before that happens, said the black half as the plant thing sinked into the ground. A few minutes later Ryu saw Konan wailing over to him with a conical straw hat with tassels hanging down and a small bell held by a red string. She was also wearing one. Here, she said as she presented the straw hat to him. He took it from her hands and placed it on his head. It was quite comfortable. Thank you, said Ryu. Konan blushed a little but quickly forced it down. They both began to walk towards Kusagakur, which geographically wasn't very far. They walked for a few hours in silence, agonizing silence. So Ryu decided to start up a conversation. So have you ever met Orochimaru in person? Asked Ryu, and he knew it was a bad question. Konan never expected Ryu to talk to her anytime soon. But she decided to answer. No, I have never met Orochimaru in person, answered Konan. And I don't particularly want to either. Naruto didn't say anything because there was no point in wondering why. There is an inn 25 kilometers from our position, we should rest there for the night, do you agree? Said Ryu. I do agree, we won't be able to follow the path and Zetsu's directions during the night, she said. Naruto never expected her to be so cooperative. He thought she was going to make his life difficult by overriding his authority and her always taking the lead and listening to her. This was amusing to him, but he mistakenly let a chuckle escape his lips, something which Konan heard. Something amusing? She asked/stated. I find it amusing that you are not what I expected you to be, replied Ryu. Konan raised her eyebrow at the blonde in confusion. And what did you expect me to be? She queried. She was interested in knowing what he thought. I expected a strong, confident woman, and yes, she truly is what I expected. Konan blushed at the compliments aimed at her. But I also expected a woman who would override my authority or follow her own lead, and only she chooses the decisions in, example, what road we should take. Konan didn't know if she should frown or scowl. They now had the inn within their sight. They opened the door and they heard a bell ring. There was a middle-aged woman behind a desk. She had dark brown hair and brown eyes. Welcome to the Sleeping Lamb, greeted the woman. Ryu removed his hat and held it within his hand. The woman at the counter blushed heavily. Was this guy a male model? But his eyes were a little strange. Konan walked up next to him and also removed her hat. We require rooms for the night and food as well will be good, said Konan neutrally. The woman turned her attention to her and nodded but also gave off a hint of jealousy. Are these two together? Very well, it just so happens we have a few free rooms, she said. Now will that be one queen-sized bed or king-sized? She asked. When Naruto and Konan heard, both blushed until Naruto decided. No, we are just, colleagues, that will be two queen-sized beds and that's all, stuttered the Ryu, clearly flustered. Konan still had her blush and was trying to force it down. The receptionist nodded and handed a key to a room. It's too bad you two are not together, you'd look like quite the cute couple along with your matching clothes, continued the woman. Konan blushed even more. Yes, she was physically attracted to Ryu, but that was it. Naruto was a lot better at controlling his flustered state and forced down a blush that was starting to appear. Thank you for the room, said Naruto, and was reminded that there was a phone for room service. The two walked around the large inn and found their rooms. It was room 69. It had to be that number, thought Konan. She was annoyed thinking that yokais and her were together. Naruto just looked at the number as if it was a number. Being cooped up in a dark cave had caused him to become disconnected from a few things. They walked in and saw two beds, queen-sized beds, a coffee table surrounded by chairs, a small bathroom and a small kitchen. And by the door was the telephone used for room service. Are you hungry? Asked Ryu. Konan looked at him for a second and was about to say something before the growl of her stomach cut he off. I'll take that as a yes. He took the phone and let it ring for a while. Then a voice answered. Yes, I would like to have some food. Konan heard a bit of gibberish. You wouldn't happen to have ramen? She heard even more gibberish. The Naruto turned to her. What do you want? Konan hesitated for a second, but her hunger was more important at the moment. Do they have flame-broiled fish? She asked. Do you have flame-broiled fish? Said Ryu into the phone. Yes, that would be all. He put the phone down and sat on one of the beds. The food will be here in half an hour. Konan sat down on the opposite bed. I think we should get to know each other, said Ryu out of the blue. Konan looked at him curiously. I want us to be able to work together. We don't have to like each, but understanding each other's fighting style and among other things will encourage teamwork, and not get us killed at the same time, explained Naruto. I will start first. I use all combat ranges ranging from long to close quarters combat, though I prefer close quarters. I am very ninjutsu heavy and sometimes I use genjutsu. I like to mock my opponents so they can lose focus and make mistakes, and I prey upon those mistakes and finish them off my opponents. Konan was perplexed that he was willingly giving her information about him. She sighed knowing that he was correct. I am a ranged combatant which will aid you because of your preferable being close quarters combat. I am able to turn my body into paper and hardening them with my chakra to become tougher than steel. I am able to form weapons from those paper sheets as well, and I can suffocate people and slice them to pieces with said paper, and because the paper is infused with chakra, fire jutsus will hardly work against me and water ninjutsu will have a similar effect, disclosed Konan. Very good. If you want to get to know me on a personal level then, just ask, said Naruto emotionlessly. Konan wasn't sure if she should ask. Other than Nagato she hardly knew anyone in the Akatsuki. The only other member she liked was Itaki, and they have hardly spoken to each other. Later their food arrived and they ate in silence. Naruto woke up the next day early. He looked over at Konan, who was still wearing her cloak, sleeping on the bed. He got up and created 10 shadow clones, and ordered them to learn the Hiraishin that he inherited from his father. He knew that he couldn't learn such an advanced and powerful jutsu in a few days even with Shadow's clones and the Sharingan. It would take him a few weeks or a couple of months depending upon the difficulty of the jutsu. So the original Naruto meditated for a few hours. Even with the healing rate he had acquired from the Kyuubi, he still needed to meditate so he could sort out the memories of his clones. Konan woke up and the first thing she noticed was Ryu Yoke's meditating on his bed. His chest armor was off, allowing Konan to see his great muscles. And she also noticed that his low ponytail fell between his shoulder blades and was thin but not too thick. That was something she never noticed. And somehow he didn't have a single scar on his body. Wait, no. Adjusting her eyes to the light, Konan saw what appeared to be a point of contact for a lightning bolt which struck him over his heart, and its appearance was grisly to say the least. She had 1 or 2 scars on her body, but they were small and hard to locate. And still she never expected Yoke's to have blonde hair. She originally pegged him as a black. Deciding to use this time of meditation to her advantage, she subtly walked into the bathroom and stripped down naked. She peeked through the door to see Ryu still sitting there, unmoving. She turned on the shower and gracefully stepped in and started washing herself, but made sure to remove her origami flower and Akatsuki ring. Her ring was white in color and had the kanji for white on it. After she was down, Konan dried herself off with a towel. And she put all her clothes back on. She left the bathroom to find Zetsu and Ryu conversing with each other. They looked back at her. We have found Orochimaru's hideout, stated Naruto. Now Konan was interested. Our primary objective was to collect his ring, and killing him a secondary objective. His base is 17 kilometers southwest from our position, hidden within the ground. This will make getting into his lair all that much more difficult. Do we even know where the door to his hideout is? Asked Konan. But this time it was Zetsu who answered. The door is surrounded by trees and it's a metal hole in the ground. It's just like what Ryu said, it's 17 kilometers southwest from here, spoke Zetsu. With that in mind, Zetsu melded into the ground. Both Naruto and Konan were ready to depart. But Konan remembered to pay the receptionist, something that never came to mind for Ryu. Both walked towards their destination. There was little need to run. Then Konan remembered what Ryu said about getting to know each other and work cohesively as partners. Ryu, what do you like? Asked Konan. Ryu was caught off guard by this question. He couldn't remember what it was that he liked. I like training and expanding my arsenal as a shinobi and fighting strong opponents, replied Naruto. Well, it was progress in character development. She expected him to brush off the question. And what do you dislike? She continued. He did say that if she wanted to know him as a person she would just have to ask. I dislike idiots, arrogant people, ignorance, and snakes, spoke Ryu. Though Konan would never know that what he meant by snakes was actually Orochimaru. Then I get the feeling that you won't like Orochimaru, said Konan, and she received a nod of confirmation from Ryu. They now saw the metal hole in the ground where Zetsu told them Orochimaru could be found. Well, this is it, said Ryu. Though Konan didn't notice his Sharingan spinning rapidly. Shikigami no Mai, thought Konan. Then her entire body was folding into paper and then turning into paper butterflies. Naruto just watched unsurprised. She would have to get the paper from somewhere. Mai Saigaku or no Jutsu, thought Naruto. His form then turned invisible and both Akatsuki members dived into the hole. one invisible and the other thousands of paper butterflies. They were now in a dark corridor lit with burning candles. We should inform each other if we find Orochimaru's ring or Orochimaru himself. We need to find a way to signal each other, whispered the invisible Naruto to paper butterflies. Then one of the butterflies became a paper aeroplane. Understanding, Ryu nodded his head. Konan had a way of contacting him but not the other way around. He then unsealed a paintbrush and chakra ink, and started drawing a seal on the paper aeroplane. This seal will heat up when I channel my chakra into it, letting you know that I have the ring, whispered Ryu. The aeroplane seemed to fly around him. Apparently Konan couldn't speak in paper form. Both went their separate ways in search of the ring. They searched numerous rooms, finding them empty. I mean, why would you have so many rooms if you weren't going to use them? Naruto made sure to pull up his hood on his coat. Orochimaru had seen him before and they might recognize him even with the loss of his whisker marks. Even though Kabuto and Orochimaru couldn't see them, Sasuke could with his Sharingan. And any other dojutsu user like Neji. He opened a door and there was nothing but a barren room. He opened another, except this time it wasn't empty. By a desk in the room was someone he hated. Kabuto Yakushi. The pet of Orochimaru was fiddling with some medical salves. Then Naruto remembered something. Pain never ordered him to not kill the snake's puppets. Naruto drew his katana from its sheath on his back, slowly and without a sound. He walked up to Kabuto at normal pace. If he went slow it would increase his reaction time and his body may be too fast for his mind to handle. He was now right behind Kabuto. He held his katana in a reverse grip and held it with both hands ready to strike at the traitorous Leaf Nin's skull. He was about to administer the finishing blow before Kabuto turned around and started walking out the room. Naruto didn't have much time to get out of the way of Kabuto's path. But he lucky his blade was 5 mm away from touching Kabuto. Luckily his Sharingan and Madara's training helped him out a lot and he was able to divert his body away from Kabuto's. He watched as Yakushi slinked away from the desk to who knows where. Ryu sheathed his katana and walked out of the room. He kept searching and searching but there was no sign of Orochimaru's ring, but he knew the traitorous Sunin was here because if Kabuto was here then the serpent wasn't far behind. He opened another room and came upon a ghastly sight. There were innocent people locked behind bars and they looked skinny and malnourished. Naruto could even see some children among them. The old Naruto would have gone to any length to free these people, no matter the cost, even his own life. But the real Naruto wasn't like that. He dropped his invisibility and made himself known to the prisoners. Most if not all looked relieved to see him. "Please sir, save us," said a man trying to reach for Ryu's cloak but instead grabbed his boot. He only just noticed the foot coming down on his hand and with an audible crack the man's hand was broken beneath Naruto's heel. The man cried and Naruto didn't silence his cries. The other caged people were looking at Naruto with anxiety. Then Ryu went through some hand seals and ended on the tiger sign. "Aren't you gonna save us, mister?" said a small girl with tears in her eyes. "No," stated Naruto. "Katon, and Dan, fire release, flame bullet, dot," said Ryu as he spat out a large flame bullet at the imprisoned people. Their screams of pain reverberating through the base. Because Orochimaru experimented on people, these screams wouldn't draw anyone to him. Naruto watched the burning flesh of the innocent people, a small smile on his face. He envisioned the ignorant people of Konoha and all who had harmed or ignored him, and it felt good killing them. But yet he had set them free. How? Their suffering at the hands of Orochimaru must have been terrible and they were to be used again and again for human experimentation and torture. They would have wanted to die afterwards. Ryu activated his invisibility and walked out of the burning room. He walked around inspecting the rooms. Then he came upon an extremely large room and there in the center was someone Ryu wanted to kill the most just to settle the score with. Sasuke Uchiha. The young Uchiha was practicing with his own sword of Kusanagi. His movements were fast and precise, obviously had a good kenjutsu teacher, must have been Orochimaru, since the snake man fawns over the kid. Ryu was just watching the Uchiha with a scrutinizing eye. He could sense that he had improved much over the past 2 years, but the former Jinchuriki wanted to know how much. Then Naruto saw Sasuke do a Chidori variation, which was clever, improving upon the jutsu that killed him. Then Sasuke turned his sight towards the door. He could see someone shrouded in chakra thanks to Sharingan. "I know you're there," stated Sasuke. Naruto wasn't surprised and it seemed to still kept his arrogant attitude. Naruto deactivated his invisibility, letting Sasuke see his Akatsuki cloak plain as day. Sasuke wasn't expecting that but kept his expression devoid of emotion, as always. Thoughts were going through his head. Akatsuki is a group of S-ranked shinobi like Itachi, when I defeat him it will prove that I'm ready to kill Itachi, thought Sasuke. He also noticed that the Akatsuki member was wearing a hood shrouding most of his face. I wasn't expecting the Akatsuki to be honest, said Sasuke to Ryu. Ryu smirked. By testing out my skills on you then I will be ready for Itachi, by killing you. Naruto chuckled. When you compare Itachi to Madara you would know that Itachi despite all his power is no match for the ancient Uchiha. Itachi is dirt to compared to Madara. And now Sasuke thinks he's ready to take on a shinobi who could rival Madara. That's completely laughable. Sasuke heard this chuckle and decided to make a point. Why are you chuckling? You should be cowering before me because only a Uchiha can defeat an Uchiha, spoke Sasuke with that arrogant voice of his. Naruto just chuckled some more. Then you obviously don't remember all the losses that were handed to your clan by the Senju, spoke Ryu with that all-might smirk. Sasuke had enough and engaged Naruto in taijutsu by using the Uchiha's signature, Interceptor Fist. But Naruto just dodged or blocked his attacks as if they were slow to him. But the strange thing was he didn't attack back. Sasuke prepared his strongest punch aimed at Ryu's head. But to his utter shock Ryu caught his punch effortlessly. Sasuke jumped back. And went through hand signs. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique, shouted Sasuke as he blew out a fireball the size of a horse at Ryu. But to his shock yet again Ryu cut through the fireball with his wind-enhanced katana. Is that all you've got? Taunted Ryu. You killed the Kyuubi's container. I expected better. Where's your Uchiha superiority? Sasuke was angered over this and drew his own sword. They both clashed. Sasuke wasn't able to get even a scratch on the guy he just parried or strafed away from his attacks. Sasuke channeled his lightning chakra into his sword increasing its cutting power. But Ryu just channeled his own wind chakra into his katana. The lightning-enhanced sword did little against the wind sword. Sasuke was fuming. Everything he did against the man did little to nothing. He was supposed to be an Uchiha and elite but yet this nobody was toying with him. Stop toying around, he yelled. He aimed a slash at Ryu but was met with air. He just vanished. Behind you, whispered a voice. It was Ryu with his back against his. You know this fight, if you could call it that, has been rather disappointing, informed Ryu. I expected better from Itachi's younger brother, baited Ryu. And it worked like a charm. Sasuke was furious so he attempted to spin around and face Ryu. Instead Naruto elbowed Sasuke in the head almost knocking him out. Sasuke keeled under the force of the elbow, it felt like a brick hitting his face. It's too bad after all that training, if you can't defeat me, how can you hope to defeat Itachi, whispered Ryu in Sasuke's ear. He grabbed Sasuke by the back of his collar and held him in the air. You're not the only one who has the Sharingan, said Naruto as Sasuke looked into his eyes. Weak, you're still so weak, if you can't kill a member of the Akatsuki then you can't kill Itachi. Naruto chucked Sasuke a good distance away. But the Uchiha was wondering how this nobody had the Sharingan. I've gone easy on you but remember, train harder, said Ryu with that smirk. Sasuke watched the Akatsuki member walk away from him. Wait, shouted Sasuke. Naruto turned his attention to him. Who are you? Asked Sasuke wearily. Ryu Yokaze, said Naruto. I wonder how much bullshit can be avoided if I kill him right now, thought Naruto. But instead he knocked Sasuke out with his Sharingan-induced genjutsu. Naruto walked around the base some more when he caught sight of a paper aeroplane with a small seal on it. The paper flew around him a bit. Do you have the ring? Asked Ryu. The aeroplane nodded. Naruto was about to leave the underground hideout when he felt a presence behind him. Well, it looks like the Akatsuki have finally tracked me down, spoke a sickly sweet voice. Naruto turned around and came face to face with the man he hated most. Orochimaru, said Ryu blankly. Orochimaru knew from first glance that this man was new to the Akatsuki. Tell me, are you new to the Akatsuki and if so what is your name? Asked Orochimaru with a frown. For if there was one thing he hated more than his home village it was his former Akatsuki colleagues he worked with. Yes, I am new to the organization and my name is Ryu Yokaze, said Naruto as he allowed Orochimaru to glimpse his eyes. Orochimaru gasped seeing a pair of Sharingan that didn't belong to Itachi or Sasuke. Well, too bad. Spoke Orochimaru sadly. I would love nothing more than to take your eyes for myself and I can tell that you are stronger than Sasuke Kunkukyuku, however I don't think you will leave this place, relatively unharmed. Sene Jashu, hidden shadow snake hands, yelled Orochimaru as snakes shot out of his sleeve and at Ryu. Naruto took out his katana and sliced apart the snakes. However, when he looked up, the snake Sennin was gone. He deduced that the jutsu he used was only a diversion. He then took a step as a long blade shot out from under him and speared the roof above. Naruto channeled his lightning chakra into his katana and stabbed the ground where the blade came from. Orochimaru used the hiding like a mole no jutsu, hiding like a mole technique, to disappear into the ground and attack with his snake sword. Orochimaru dodged the lightning blade that and jumped out from behind Ryu, but not before spitting out the snake that connected the sword. Ryu went through the hand seals and prepared a jutsu, Raiten, Reikyu Utai, lightning release, lightning orb. Naruto collected lightning chakra in the palm of his hand. It had a dark blue sphere around it with a small black ball with flickering lightning sparking off it. Naruto threw it at Orochimaru, where a bright light of lightning ensued. The result, a large chunk of the building's structure was vaporized and took the shape of a ball. There was some leftover lightning flickering around. Ryu was about to walk away as objective complete, but he heard dark chuckling form behind him. Orochimaru burst from the ground and expanded his mouth into inhuman lengths. Madara no Jin, formation of 10,000 snakes, thought Orochimaru as thousands of snakes slithered out of his mouth and were heading directly at Ryu. Each snake opened its mouth and the blade of sword served as replacements for their tongues. Naruto did the only thing logical. He ran. He ran for a few minutes with the blade snakes following after him. Then he remembered something. Why can't I just use that jutsu, thought Ryu. He stopped and faced the snakes head on. The snakes then landed on top of him, presumably piercing his body. Orochimaru smirked. That was one member of the Akatsuki taken care of. But he frowned when he saw a white skeletal being with 4 arms, 4 glowing yellow eyes and 2 forward-facing bull horns. Now Orochimaru felt fear. What? What? What is that? He yelled within his mind. And Naruto answered him as if reading his mind. This. Orochimaru is the perfect defense. Orochimaru was sweating. This thing in front of him was hellish in appearance and it literally struck fear into him. The Susanoo, and now I will finish what attack has started, said Ryu. His Susanoo then started to form numerous white megatama in between its hands, which were attached by a string of chakra, and threw them at Orochimaru, like shuriken. Fortunately for Orochimaru, he was barely able to dodge the shuriken-like projectiles, but he didn't notice that they created an explosive collision with the interior walls of the hall. Ryu, seeing his attack wasn't working, decided to change his attack pattern. He started going through some hand signs. Since he was in an enclosed area, he would have to lessen the size and destruction of the jutsu. Futon, Ryu Kisoku no Jutsu, Wind Release, Dragon Breath Technique, yelled Ryu. He blew out the head of a Japanese dragon the size of his body, which flew at Orochimaru. Don't get confused between the Kuryu Kisoku no Jutsu, this is just a weaker version. Naruto then channeled a large amount of chakra into his right eye and whispered Amaterasu. The wind dragon head was then set ablaze with black flames. Now it was cutting and shredding along with burning and scorching. Anton, Kaenryu Kisoku no Jutsu, Blaze Release, Blazing Dragon Breath Technique. Orochimaru didn't have enough time before he was consumed in the tearing and incinerating dragon head. The hall was then alit with black flames and the walls had deep scar-like marks. Ryu deactivated his Susanoo, which was still active. He looked at his handiwork, the blazing hall burning the walls. Objective completed. And finally he started walking away and back to the entrance of the hideout. Orochimaru's body was burning and bleeding terribly. He had underestimated the new Akatsuki member greatly. And those jutsus, the Susanoo and the Blaze Release combination with the wind, were magnificent. But he had bigger problems than thinking about that. Ignoring all the pain that was screaming at his body from the fire and the throbbing deep cuts all over his body, Orochimaru widened his jaw like a snake and a pair of pale hands opened up like a serpent shedding its skin. The new Orochimaru escaped from his previous skin before the black flames could engulf. He no longer had any wounds, but the amount of chakra coupled with his wounds forced him to use a lot more than he expected. He was now panting heavily and coughing. Ryu Yokaze was now at the top of his hit list. Naruto was walking back to the entrance of the hideout. He was wondering if he really killed Orochimaru, but if so, it wasn't important. He found Konan waiting for him at the entrance, holding a ring between her fingers. She offered him the ring, in which she received a thank you in return. I heard the sounds of fighting within the halls. Orochimaru, she asked. Yes, I fought him, not sure if I killed him. The man's like a cockroach. No matter how many times you flush them down the drain, they always happen to find their way back, spoke Ryu. Konan nodded her head at his assertion you could never tell with Orochimaru. They exited the hideout and started walking back to the hidden rain, where they would receive their next orders. Naruto was mulling over his fight with which was one-sided from his point of view. That was the first time he tried a combination with Blaze Release and the results pleased him greatly. He should have to try out more combinations with his Eternal Mangekyo but with Wind Jutsu for the added devastation and power. But then a thought came to him, one of his goals among the Akatsuki. Eliminating the fake Madara. Pain wouldn't believe him not since he just joined, even with Zetsu backing up his claim and he knew that the fake only operated through Nagato. He would have to establish himself within the ranks and possibly have Konan join him since her word among the establishment would outweigh his own. Thinking about getting Konan to join him was the easy part. Getting her to actually join him was a far more difficult thing. He also sensed that Nagato and Konan were close, they were not lovers but great friends he believed. And Nagato was more likely to believe her than Zetsu any day but he also needed proof that Madara was not Madara. But conspiracies such as these would take time. So now was a good time to enact his plan. Konan, what do you like? Asked Naruto with his hood down. Konan blinked. Why was he asking such a question? What do you mean? She asked. Well, since you wanted to get to know me better, I wish to extend the same courtesy, said Ryu. Seeing no problem with it since she did the same thing, Konan answered. Well, I like origami and flower pressing along with helping Pain, answered the Akatsuki member. Now Naruto knew why she loved origami since her ninjutsu style was centered upon paper, but the flower pressing was new to him. But helping Nagato was no surprise, she seemed adamantly loyal to him, loyalty he could exploit. And what do you dislike? Continued Ryu. I dislike feeling useless, and watching friends die, she replied. These dislikes were ultimately fueling Naruto to have Konan as an ally on his side. I see those are very admirable and gorgeous qualities you have, said Naruto. Konan blushed at his compliment, she never expected such reaction out of him, she was sure he'd be disgusted by her hobbies. And being called gorgeous wasn't helping her fight her blush. It would take another day to reach Omegakure and the sun was going down at their fastest speeds. They wouldn't make it to the village and they passed by the inn they were at a few days earlier, so they had to camp out during the night, in the forest. Unfortunately neither of them bothered to pack a camp, so they had to make do with sticks and twigs for a fire and the ground as beds. Naruto wasn't bothered by the cold. Living in a dark cold hovel for 2 years helped him out greatly. But Konan was a different story. She had tried to get to sleep but the cold wind scratching her face was preventing her from doing so. She then felt something warm against her back. When she touched it with her hand she felt clothing and fur muscles against it. Don't worry, said Ryu out loud. His body was pressed up against her. It was to her an intimate and compromising position. I saw you shivering, so I helped out. I didn't ask you to help me, bit back Konan. Naruto still had the expressionless face of his. Doesn't matter, you were cold and now you're warm, reassured Ryu. Fine, relented Konan. She dozed off to sleep in the comfort of the blonde. When Konan woke up she was shocked to find Ryu and herself in his arms. Their faces were a few centimeters apart and his bosom was pressed up against him and her hands were on his chest. She looked at his face. It was calm and serene but at the same time it looked similar to his usual expression. Her face turned a deep shade of scarlet and she tried to ease herself out of his arms, but that only helped in making his grip on her stronger and resulted in pulling her face into his chest with his chin above her forehead. She knew that the only way to get out of his embrace was to wake him up, but the warmth he was generating from his core was quite soothing to her and a part of her wanted to stay a little longer in his arms. She squirmed in his arms a little but she looked back up to see a pair of Sharingan staring at her. To say she was intimidated a little was correct. Naruto let her out of his embrace and got up off the ground. Did you sleep well? Questioned Ryu. Konan nodded her head at this. She didn't notice the red stain that adorned her partner's cheeks. We should continue on to Omegakure. He was stopped by Konan, who held out her hand which had Orochimaru's former ring in it. Take it, it's yours now, she urged. The ring was slate blue in color and had the kanji for sky in the middle. Naruto took the ring from Konan's hand and placed it on his armored right index finger. They then began their journey back to Omegakure. They were now at Omegakure and were walking to the tallest tower. Konan used her signature paper jutsu and turned into paper butterflies and flew across the village, while Ryu used his invisibility jutsu and walked to the tower. They found Pain in his usual place staring at the village. Were you successful? Said Pain as he turned towards Naruto. Ryu showed him the ring on his finger. Is Orochimaru dead? I'm not sure, Orochimaru has a habit of escaping death, stated Ryu. It doesn't matter as long as you have the ring, said Pain. Zetsu has informed me of your cooperation and the success of your assignment, therefore I have decided to make you two permanent partners. Konan was a little saddened by this. Naruto just inwardly smirked. Nagato was making his plans easier for him. Konan got over her bout of sadness and held her neutral expression. It was easier for everyone if she cooperated. I will contact the Akatsuki and tell them the news of a new confirmed member, said Pain as he did the hand sign for the Gentoshin no Jutsu, magic lantern body technique. Both Naruto and Konan did the necessary hand seal. And they found themselves back in the same dark room with the burning lantern in the middle. Then astral images of the other Akatsuki members became visible. Ryu Yokais is now a full member of the Akatsuki, informed Pain. Kisame smirked. He liked Ryu. Deidara Oswell. He respected Yokais's version of art. You couldn't see Sasori's expression. Kakazu grinned. He liked Ryu a lot since he caused so much trouble for Haiden. Itaka was unreadable and Haiden fumed. He was hoping Orochimaru would kill the prick. And he will be partnered with Konan permanently, said Pain. Now within a year we will begin the capture and extraction of the Biju, and 2 years from then we will capture the Kyuubi. Until we begin our true operation within a year we will be gaining funds for the Akatsuki. All the members nodded at this. I will relay the missions and assignments, and if I cannot, Zetsu will. Then the astral bodies started disappearing. Naruto and Konan were brought back to their original positions. They spared each other glances. Red met Amber and Amber met Red. They both walked out of the room and gathered any necessities they would need for any of their traveling. Then Pain approached them. We have received various missions from Kirigakure, from the Mizukage herself. I will send you two there to complete any missions that require your capabilities and attention. Very well, Leader Sama, said Ryu. He sealed some things into his seals on his wrist and made sure to check if he missed anything. Naruto had never been to the land of water. He wanted to see how the country differed from the land of fires, and he wanted to meet the Mizukage, whose beauty is said to rival Tsunade's. He wanted to see if those rumors were true. He strapped his katana to his back, dusted off his cloak, and he and Konan left a Megakure behind, heading towards the land of water and Kirigakure. Who knows, maybe there would be some unexpected